She only asked Santa for one thing, more time with Mommy. But the man who overheard her whisper would change their lives forever. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to Ms. Love Stories channel, the place where love, drama, and unforgettable moments come alive. I'm so thrilled you're here, ready to dive into stories that will make your heart race, bring tears, and leave you believing in the power of love. Before we begin, I want to get to know all of you. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from, because in the next video, I'll give a special shout out to some of you amazing viewers from around the world. I can't wait to see how far our love story family reaches. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, so you never miss a single emotional journey. Get ready to feel, laugh, cry, and fall in love all over again. Because every story we share here is for you. Now, the story begins. Rose. The snow began early that December, soft and timid like a secret the sky was almost afraid to confess. It coated the streets in quiet white, blurring footprints almost as soon as they were made. Christmas lights twinkled on balconies and store windows, but for some, the season felt less like magic and more like a reminder of what was missing. Inside a tiny apartment on the east side of town, Emily Grace, age 8, pressed her nose to the frosted window. Her breath fogged the glass, and with a little finger she drew a crooked heart, then wiped it away before her mother could see. She didn't want to remind Mommy of hearts. Hearts meant love, and love meant losing something eventually. From the bedroom, a gentle cough sounded, soft first, then rough enough to shake the walls of the little girl's soul. Emily turned quickly, her small hands clutching the hem of her sweater as she watched her mother, Lily Grace, emerge with a tired smile. Lily was pale in a way Christmas lights could never brighten. Yet she smiled, always smiled, like she didn't want Emily to see how heavy her bones had begun to feel. "Morning, Star," Lily whispered, pushing a strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. "Morning, Mommy," Emily whispered back, her voice too steady for a child who understood far too much. Down the hall, the kitchen smelled faintly of cinnamon oatmeal, thin, because they needed what little they had to stretch. Emily carried bowls to the table, and Lily placed one careful scoop into each. The silence lasted only a few seconds before Emily broke it. "Mommy, if I make a Christmas wish, will it come true?" Lily's spoon paused midair. She smiled, soft, aching, hopeful. "If you believe it can," she answered. Emily nodded, but something in the way she stared down at her food revealed a truth no child should carry. She needed this wish. She needed it more than she needed toys or presents or snow. Across town, in a penthouse that sat above the clouds like a world of its own, Jerry Lawson stood in front of his window, watching snow fall over the city he ruled like a silent king. His suit was perfect. His success was undeniable. And yet he had never felt more alone. 3 assistants waited behind him, hands full of holiday event schedules, charity galas, meetings, and proposals. Jerry barely listened. "What's first on the agenda?" he asked without turning. A woman in a red blazer flipped open her digital tablet. "The Lawson Christmas Charity Ball, sir. You'll be expected to speak on stage again. Something inspiring this year, perhaps? People respond well to emotion." Jerry huffed. Emotion. Something he used to understand. Something life had quietly stolen from him the day his younger sister passed. Too young, too sudden, too unfair. He hadn't decorated a Christmas tree since. "Just send me what I need to sign," he said, voice flat, steady, untouchable. "Yes, sir." Meetings continued. Words blurred. Faces came and went. Jerry listened to thousands of requests, millions of dollars worth of numbers, none of which filled the emptiness inside his chest. Money couldn't warm cold rooms. Power couldn't erase memories. Success couldn't bring back someone you loved. When the meeting ended, Jerry slipped into his office, shut the door, and exhaled like someone finally letting himself breathe. On his desk sat a photograph, one of him and his sister, taken years ago. Christmas hats crookedly perched. Both laughing. Both whole. He touched the frame only for a moment, then looked away. Outside, through the window, he saw a bright sign across the street. Holiday Mall. Santa visits today. Crowds. Kids. Families together. A life he watched but never entered. Maybe today. Maybe without understanding why. Jerry decided to walk across the street. Just for a moment. just to feel something human. Meanwhile, Emily and Lily were bundling up. 2 scarves, mismatched gloves, 1 coat zipped slowly so coughs wouldn't shake it loose. Their apartment may have been small, but the world outside was big, and today they were going somewhere bright. "We'll get hot cocoa," Lily said, catching her daughter's eager grin. "And see Santa?" Emily asked, trying to sound casual, though her heart beat like bells. Lily smoothed her hat. "And see Santa." They stepped into the snow, one with fragile steps, one skipping to match them. The wind bit at their cheeks, but warmth balanced every chill. Christmas carols spilled from shop speakers as they approached the holiday mall. Children giggled. Lights sparkled. The air smelled of gingerbread and warm pretzels. Emily squeezed her mom's hand. Lily squeezed back slower, weak, but loving. Across the mall entrance, Jerry Lawson stepped through the rotating doors at the same time they did, though none of them noticed each other yet. Jerry's eyes roamed the decorations, the laughter, the families. Something inside him softened. Only an inch, but enough. He walked with no purpose in mind, only letting himself move where the music pulled him. And slowly, unknowingly, it pulled him toward the center of the mall, where Santa waited, costume crisp, children lined like hope itself. And somewhere in that line stood Emily, holding her mother's hand, waiting for her turn, gathering her courage like snowflakes in small palms. Jerry didn't see her yet, but he would. The moment was coming, the moment that would change all 3 lives forever. If you were in this mall, would you notice a child like Emily? Would you feel compelled to help? Comment your thoughts below. The Christmas fair was bustling with lights, laughter, and the scent of cinnamon and roasted chestnuts drifting through the cold winter air. Children ran excitedly from stall to stall, their cheeks rosy, their voices ringing with pure joy. Yet, in the midst of this cheerful chaos, Lily walked slowly, holding Emily's tiny hand. Her eyes were distant, her smile forced. Every twinkle of the holiday decorations felt hollow to her, a painful reminder of everything she had lost and the struggle she fought every day to keep her daughter happy. Emily tugged at her mother's coat, pointing to the toy train gliding around a small track. "Mommy, can we?" Lily knelt down, brushing a strand of hair from Emily's face. "I'm sorry, sweetie, not this time." Her voice cracked slightly, but she forced herself to smile. Emily frowned, not fully understanding why today felt so heavy. They approached the large Santa display in the center of the square. Children were lining up, laughing, clutching wish lists. Lily knelt beside Emily as they watched others take pictures and whisper wishes into Santa's ear. The joy of the moment seemed unreachable. Emily looked up at Santa with hopeful eyes, and Lily swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her reality pressing down on her chest. She bent slightly, her voice barely a whisper, trembling. It's Mommy's last Christmas," she said, her eyes glistening with tears. I just want her to be happy." It was the kind of words that should never escape a parent's lips, a confession of exhaustion, fear, and quiet despair. Yet they did, and in that frozen instant Jerry, who had been standing nearby, noticed. He was tall, imposing yet composed, dressed impeccably in a dark coat that contrasted sharply with the festive chaos. At first he thought he misheard, but then he caught the second part. "Please, just let her have one happy moment." Jerry froze, the noise of the fair fading around him. He had built empires, solved complex crises, and managed millions. Yet these words pierced him more than any boardroom battle ever could. A mother, worn and vulnerable, whispering her heart's ultimate wish for her child. And not knowing anyone was listening. He looked at her, Lily kneeling, clutching Emily's hand, her beauty marred by exhaustion, her eyes filled with a raw vulnerability that demanded protection. Something inside him stirred. An instinct, a pull, a deep, unspoken recognition that this was more than a fleeting moment of sadness. This was a human connection he could not ignore. Jerry's presence went unnoticed by Lily. He stepped closer, subtly, silently, as if he were drawn by an invisible thread. Every laugh around them, every cheer, felt distant now. In that small, frozen bubble, it was just her, her daughter, and him. The potential for something extraordinary hanging delicately in the air. Lily whispered again, almost to herself. I don't know how to make her happy." Her confession was heavy with love, fear, and exhaustion. And Jerry, who had faced boardrooms, betrayals, and challenges that tested his soul, felt his heart tighten. For the first time in a long while, he realized that some problems could not be solved with money, influence, or power. Some required only courage, empathy, and the willingness to care when it counted the most. Jerry finally spoke, softly, but with authority that surprised even himself. "Maybe I can help." The words hung in the air. Lily looked up, startled, her eyes meeting his for the first time. A stranger, a man who seemed impossibly out of place among the glittering lights and laughter, had heard her plea, and had responded. For a heartbeat, the world paused. Emily blinked in curiosity, Lily in shock, and Jerry felt the undeniable pull of responsibility and connection. It was the moment the story truly began. A chance encounter, a whispered wish, and the spark of something neither of them could have predicted. The fair continued around them, oblivious to the emotional storm in the center. But for Lily and Jerry, everything had shifted. A silent bond had formed, fragile yet potent, and the first step toward a shared journey, one of love, sacrifice, and hope, had been taken. The warmth of the SUV had faded, leaving only the crisp chill of December air. Emily and Lily walked quietly beside Jerry as he followed them down the narrow streets toward their apartment. The city was alive with Christmas lights, cheerful laughter echoing from nearby stores, but a heaviness pressed down on all of them. Hope, fragile and dangerous, trembled between the three of them like a candle flame that could be snuffed out at any moment. Emily's small hand remained tightly clasped in her mother's. She glanced up at Jerry occasionally, curiosity flickering across her tear-streaked face. Yet fear kept her words trapped behind her lips. She wanted to ask so many questions. Why are you helping us? Who are you really? Do people like you even exist outside of stories? But fear of disappointment, fear of another broken promise, held her silent. Jerry, on the other hand, felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him like never before. He had acted impulsively, driven by a mixture of guilt, loneliness, and that whisper he'd overheard. The unspoken plea that had shaken something inside him. But as he followed them through the streets, doubt crept in. Who am I to interfere? What if I fail them? What if my wealth doesn't fix what's broken? He wanted to do something, anything, to ease their suffering, but a cautious part of him resisted. Jerry had always controlled everything, businesses, schedules, finances, but life like this was chaotic, unpredictable, raw, and he wasn't sure he could navigate it without causing more harm than good. Lily sensed the unease in him. She walked slowly, her cough punctuating the air like a subtle reminder of the fragility of her health. When she glanced at Jerry, there was gratitude in her eyes, but also caution. She had been disappointed so many times before. She knew that kindness could vanish as quickly as it appeared. "Thank you," Lily whispered finally, her voice soft but strained. You didn't have to do this." Jerry paused, looking at her. The words hung in the cold air like fragile snowflakes. "I know," he said carefully, almost afraid to speak further. I just," his voice faltered. He wasn't used to explaining his feelings. No one had ever asked him to be human before. "I just thought maybe I could help." Emily's eyes widened. "Really?" she asked. Her voice was small, barely audible, yet it carried the weight of years of quiet suffering and unmet needs. Jerry nodded, smiling faintly. "Really?" But inside, the doubts festered. He had helped countless people before, yes, but always from a distance, anonymously, efficiently, cleanly. Never like this. Never face-to-face with someone who depended entirely on him. The responsibility was terrifying. What if he failed them? What if he couldn't give them what they truly needed? Emily noticed his hesitation, though she couldn't name it. Children sense emotion in ways adults often forget. Something in his gaze told her he was scared too. And a sliver of hope began to bloom. But alongside hope, there was uncertainty. The fragile trust they had started to build was delicate, like ice over running water. One wrong step, and it could shatter completely. The trio arrived at their building. Jerry helped Lily step carefully up the worn concrete stairs, insisting she lean on him when her cough shook her body. Emily followed, her grip on her mother's hand never loosening, her small frame trembling in the cold. Once inside, Lily and Emily settled near the modest heater, the faint smell of old books and worn upholstery filling the cramped apartment. Jerry stood awkwardly, unsure where to place himself. This was not a boardroom, not a gala, not a business meeting. There were no rules here. No clear path forward. Emily broke the silence first. Do you always help strangers like this? Jerry hesitated. He wanted to say something clever, reassuring, but none of it felt honest. Finally he admitted softly, no, not really. But sometimes someone reminds you that there's more to life than numbers and deals. The words hung, and Emily felt the truth behind them. There was pain in his voice, a loneliness that echoed her own. And yet, despite that, he had chosen to act. That small act of courage and kindness made her heart ache and swell at the same time. But even as they shared these tentative moments, the resistance remained. Lily withdrew slightly into her chair, pulling Emily closer to her side. We can't rely on anyone, she whispered, almost to herself. People come and go, and promises break. Jerry nodded silently, understanding. He had broken promises too, even to himself. He didn't push. He waited. Because in situations like this, forcing trust only led to disaster. Outside, the snow continued to fall, coating the streets in silence. Inside, 3 lives hovered on the edge of connection. Each afraid to fully reach out, each secretly longing to. The tension was raw, delicate, and painful. This act of kindness, this small intrusion of hope into their lives, was terrifying for everyone involved. But the whisper that had started it all, the child's quiet plea for her mother, lingered in Jerry's mind. It was a reminder that some moments demanded courage, even when fear was overwhelming. And so, resistance persisted, but the seed had been planted. None of them could go back to the life they had known before. The next step was inevitable. They would either allow the fragile connection to grow, or watch it break before it had a chance to bloom. Have you ever struggled to trust someone who wanted to help? Comment your story below. Circumstances push hearts together. The wind outside had turned sharper, whipping the snow into small, stinging crystals that swept across the streets like tiny needles. Inside the apartment, the fragile warmth from the heater barely held back the winter chill. Lily sat on the edge of the worn couch, coughing softly, while Emily sat close, trying to distract her mother with whispered stories of school and imaginary snowball fights. Jerry remained standing near the doorway, unsure whether to sit, pace, or simply leave. But leaving was no longer an option. The decision had been made for him. By circumstance, by fate, by the raw human need that hung thick in the air. Do you need anything right now? Jerry asked carefully, finally breaking the silence. His voice, calm yet hesitant, was the kind of quiet presence that invited trust but demanded none. Lily looked at him, eyes wary but not hostile. It's okay, she said. Her voice cracked slightly, not from anger but from exhaustion. We'll manage, we always do. Emily tilted her head, studying him. He wants to help Mommy, she said softly. Maybe we can let him. Lily glanced at her daughter, then at Jerry. Something in his posture, the way he seemed so out of place yet so earnest, made her heart hesitate. She had been letting the world decide for them for so long, had been used to fighting alone, but here was someone stepping in, someone who could help. And yet, trust didn't come easily. Jerry noticed her hesitation and nodded, accepting it. He didn't push. He pulled his coat tighter around himself and remained standing, giving them space while still remaining present. He could feel the weight of his own uncertainty pressing against him. He wanted to be more than just a passerby in their lives. But he wasn't sure he deserved to. The room was quiet except for the occasional cough from Lily, the distant hum of traffic outside, and Emily's small whispers about imaginary snow angels. Minutes stretched into long, careful moments. Slowly the proximity, being in the same small space, breathing the same air, started to work its magic. Jerry stepped closer, noticing small details he hadn't before. The way Lily's hands trembled slightly as she held Emily's, the way Emily's hair caught the weak light from the heater, the faint smell of worn fabric mixed with cinnamon from yesterday's attempt at a small holiday treat. He realized that despite all his wealth, nothing he had ever possessed had felt this real. I can bring over some things tomorrow, he said softly. Warm blankets, food, maybe medicine for your mother. Emily's eyes widened. Really? Jerry nodded. If you'll let me. Lily hesitated, then finally whispered, "We will accept help. But not because we have to. Because we choose to." The words were simple, but they carried enormous weight. Jerry felt something he hadn't felt in years. An opening, a crack in the armor around his heart. He nodded slowly, understanding that this small acknowledgement of trust was more than any agreement or contract could ever be. And so, for the next few hours, the three of them remained together in that cramped apartment. Jerry helped carry groceries from the small market down the block, showing Emily how to arrange items gently, not to crush anything. Lily watched quietly, a mixture of relief and skepticism lingering in her gaze. Emily laughed quietly when Jerry accidentally dropped a small box of cookies, sending them rolling across the floor. Her laughter was soft at first, then more genuine as Jerry joined in, shaking his head and pretending to chase the runaway cookies. For the first time in months, the apartment felt alive. Warmth didn't just come from the heater. It came from connection, from shared moments, from laughter that was hesitant but real. By evening, Lily rested in her chair, Emily nestled against her side, and Jerry sat across from them, watching quietly. The city outside glittered with lights, but nothing was as bright as the fragile bond forming in that small apartment. Though fear and uncertainty lingered, the forced proximity had begun to do its work. They were no longer strangers sharing a fleeting encounter. They were three lives touching, influencing, and healing in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. And though none of them could fully admit it yet, the walls around their hearts were beginning to crumble, brick by brick, snowflake by snowflake. Outside, the snowstorm grew heavier. Inside, the warmth remained, small but steadfast. And in that quiet, shared space, the first threads of hope wove themselves into something stronger. Something that might just survive the harsh winter yet to come. The apartment was quiet now, the snowstorm outside muting the city into an almost sacred silence. Emily had curled up beside her mother on the sofa, watching the heater's weak glow flicker across the worn walls. Jerry remained seated across from them, the air thick with an unspoken tension that neither wanted to break. The room was small, but in that space, everything felt magnified. Their fears, their doubts, and now, the fragile glimmer of trust. It was Emily who first spoke, though she didn't realize she was opening a door that would lead all of them into the past. "Mom, why don't we have a real Christmas tree like other people?" Her voice was soft, almost tentative, as if afraid of the answer. Lily swallowed, her throat tight. She hadn't wanted to answer this question for years, hadn't wanted Emily to see the truth behind their scarcity. But now, with Jerry present, a stranger who had offered help without hesitation, she felt a strange pressure to be honest, to explain herself. "Because, last year we couldn't afford it," Lily said finally, her voice catching slightly. She looked at Jerry, who nodded gently, encouraging her silently to continue. "And the year before, well, your father. He passed away right before Christmas. I couldn't bring myself to celebrate. I couldn't even get a tree." Emily's eyes widened slightly. She had known her father was gone, had felt his absence every day. But hearing her mother's voice tremble as she spoke of him made the loss sharper, heavier. I don't remember him much," Emily whispered. I remember his laugh, and the toy car he gave me." Lily's hands shook slightly as she reached out to hold her daughter's. The memory of her husband, of the man who had promised them a life filled with laughter, came flooding back like a wave she had kept at bay for years. Jerry remained silent, absorbing the scene before him. He had seen loss before, of course, families broken by illness, poverty, misfortune. But this was different. He saw it on a human scale, intimate, raw. It was a reality that money could never repair, a wound no amount of charity could erase. And yet, he also saw the courage in Lily and Emily, their resilience in the face of heartbreak, and it stirred something long buried in him. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint hiss of the heater and the distant tapping of snow against the window. Jerry's mind drifted, as it often did, to his own past. Memories he had long buried surfaced. Memories of his younger sister, Claire, who had been the only person who truly understood him. Claire had been vibrant, full of life, and her death had left a hole in him he had tried to fill with success, power, and wealth. But nothing filled the emptiness. Nothing had ever reached the depth of that loss. He cleared his throat, surprising both Lily and Emily with the weight in his voice. You know, I understand a little of what it's like to lose someone, he said carefully, each word measured. I lost my sister years ago. I threw myself into work after that, thinking money and success could fix things. But it doesn't. It doesn't replace people, or laughter or love. Lily studied him, skepticism mingled with curiosity. And that made you want to help us? Jerry nodded slowly. I saw something in you and Emily. I saw a reminder that life isn't just about surviving or keeping busy. Sometimes it's about the little moments. And sometimes someone has to remind you that even in pain, you can still connect. Emily blinked rapidly, processing his words. She had never met someone like him before. Someone who had clearly lost so much yet still offered kindness without expecting anything in return. It was confusing, overwhelming, and inspiring all at once. For the next hour, stories spilled quietly between them. Lily spoke of the struggle to provide for Emily, of the countless hospital visits, of nights lying awake wondering how she could keep her daughter safe. Emily shared small memories of her father, and the little traditions they tried to maintain despite hardship. Jerry listened, occasionally offering a story of his sister, of a family he had lost too soon. By the time the conversation lulled, the three of them were changed. Something unspoken had shifted. Their defenses had dropped slightly, just enough to allow empathy and understanding to flow between them. They had all shared wounds, grief, and memories too painful to revisit often. Yet in doing so, a fragile bond began to form. Yet even as trust and connection grew, the undercurrent of fear persisted. Lily worried that hope was dangerous, that Jerry might leave, that kindness might be fleeting. Jerry feared that his efforts might never be enough, that wealth could not mend what life had broken. And Emily, she feared losing both her mother and this newfound glimmer of hope. The snow outside continued to fall, relentless and beautiful, blanketing the city in white. Inside, though, the storm of emotions had finally found a pause. A quiet space where honesty had begun to break through years of survival instincts, fear, and silence. This was not a resolution. Not yet. But it was the beginning of understanding. The acknowledgement that their lives were no longer entirely separate, that their pasts, though filled with pain, had shaped them in ways that could now be shared. And in sharing, perhaps, they could start to heal. Fragile connections that feel like healing. The morning sun seeped through the thin curtains, spilling a pale glow across the modest apartment. Outside, the city streets were still dusted in fresh snow, sparkling like a blanket of fragile hope. Inside, though, the atmosphere was quiet, almost reverent. The previous night's revelations had shifted something in each of them. They were no longer just a mother and daughter, and a distant benefactor. They were three people connected by shared vulnerability, and that bond, delicate as it was, needed nurturing. Emily was the first to break the silence, tugging at Jerry's sleeve with the energy only a child could summon after a restless night. "Can we make cookies today?" she asked, her voice bright, almost hopeful. Jerry glanced at Lily, who offered a small, reluctant smile. "I think that's a great idea," he said gently. "We'll make them together. But you have to promise not to eat all the dough before we bake it." Emily giggled. "I can't promise that." It was a simple moment, yet it cracked the tension that had held the apartment like a heavy curtain. Jerry laughed, the sound low but genuine, and something in Emily's eyes softened. She had rarely heard an adult laugh without restraint, without caution. For a moment, the past hardships melted away, and the apartment smelled faintly of flour and sugar, of warmth and possibility. As they worked together in the tiny kitchen, Jerry's attention to small details became apparent. He showed Emily how to measure the flour precisely, how to gently stir the chocolate chips, and even let her crack the eggs with a careful hand. Lily watched from the table, sipping a cup of tea, occasionally interjecting instructions but mostly observing. There was a subtle tenderness in the way Jerry treated Emily, not like a stranger or a charity case, but as someone worthy of attention, care, and respect. "You know," Jerry said quietly, "when I was a kid, my sister and I used to make cookies like this every Christmas. She would always sneak extra chocolate chips and hide them under her sleeve. I never told her I knew, just let her feel proud." Emily's eyes widened. "Really? Did she get in trouble?" Jerry shook his head, smiling faintly. Never. Sometimes letting someone feel joy, even in little ways, is the best gift you can give. The atmosphere was softening. Laughter began to echo in the small apartment, timid at first, then more freely. Emily leaned against her mother, whispering, "I think he's nice, Mommy." Lily's chest tightened at the simple words, a mixture of relief and lingering caution. "Yes," she said quietly, her gaze meeting Jerry's. "He is." By midday, the apartment smelled of fresh-baked cookies, cinnamon, and something less tangible but equally vital, connection. Jerry, Lily, and Emily had begun sharing not just space, but themselves. Small touches, quiet jokes, and gestures of care wove a fragile tapestry of trust and affection. Even in these small moments, however, Jerry's mind wandered to the weight of responsibility he had accepted. The bond was fragile, yes, but it was also real. Every smile, every laugh, every quiet glance carried the unspoken question. Can this last? Later, as they sat together on the couch, Emily holding a slightly burnt cookie in her hand, she whispered, almost conspiratorially, "Do you think Santa will really come tonight?" Jerry smiled softly, reaching out to tuck a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "I think he might, but sometimes it's the people around you who bring the magic." Lily's eyes welled with tears, not from sadness, but from the quiet recognition that life could still surprise her, that kindness could still find her family. The snow continued to fall outside, but inside, the small apartment had become a haven. A place where laughter, warmth, and fragile trust could exist, if only for a moment. And in that moment, the three of them were learning to lean on each other, to share their burdens lightly, and to allow the first glimmers of healing to take root. But even as peace settled, there was a quiet tension lingering beneath the surface. Life was never simple, and they all knew the fragile bond could be tested again. Yet for the first time, hope felt like more than just a whisper. It felt real, tangible, and alive. The apartment, once warm and alive with the smell of cookies and the soft glow of the heater, now felt heavy, almost suffocating. The fragile bubble of trust and comfort Jerry, Lily, and Emily had built was about to face its first real storm. It began innocuously, with a knock on the door. Jerry hesitated before answering. Outside stood a man in a dark coat, a clipboard in hand, with an expression that blended authority and something more calculating. "Mr. Jerry Whitman?" the man asked, his tone professional but sharp. "I need to speak with you regarding the circumstances surrounding this apartment and the people inside." Jerry stiffened, a flicker of alarm passing over his face. "What do you mean?" The man glanced past him toward Lily and Emily. "There are concerns about housing, welfare, and oversight. It's come to our attention that this situation might not meet certain standards." Lily's heart dropped. "What?" she whispered. Her voice shook, the warmth of their fragile home suddenly threatened by bureaucracy and judgment. She looked at Jerry, eyes wide with panic and fear. Why would they care now? Jerry ran a hand through his hair, frustrated but trying to remain calm. "It's a misunderstanding. I can handle it. Just please stay calm." Emily's small voice trembled from the couch. "Mommy, are they going to take us away?" Lily shook her head violently, trying to reassure her daughter, but even she felt the creeping panic. The trust they had started to build seemed to shatter in that instant, replaced by fear and uncertainty. In the midst of this chaos, Jerry's phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. "Rumors spreading. Reporters outside. They know you're here." The tension snapped like a fragile string. Jerry's controlled demeanor cracked. "I can't risk any of you being hurt because of me," he muttered, frustration and fear mixing in his tone. Maybe I shouldn't have gotten involved." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "You were helping us. Why would you ever say that?" He looked away, guilt heavy in his expression. "Because helping isn't always safe. Sometimes it puts the people you care about in danger. I didn't think about how this might affect you." Emily's small sobs broke the momentary silence, echoing painfully in the apartment. "I like him, Mommy," she cried. "Why is he leaving?" The world outside the apartment seemed to press in. A storm not of snow this time but of misunderstanding, fear, and external pressure. The fragile trust they had nurtured felt impossible to protect against the weight of reality. Jerry tried to reach out, to hold Lily's hand, but she pulled away instinctively, feeling a mixture of fear, hurt, and distrust. "No," she whispered sharply. I can't. I can't risk this." The tension escalated further when the man at the door added another complication. "Mr. Whitman, unless this is resolved quickly, I will have to take action. There's no time for delays." The apartment, once a haven, now felt like a cage. Emotions ran high, fear, anger, desperation, and heartbreak colliding in every glance and word. Jerry's protective instincts screamed at him to leave, to solve the situation alone, but he couldn't abandon Lily and Emily. Yet every action seemed to push them further away. For the first time, Lily questioned the reality of kindness, of trust, and of hope. She wondered if letting Jerry in had been a mistake. Emily's tears were tiny daggers of truth. Hearts could be broken in an instant, and innocence was fragile. Jerry felt the full weight of his failures, the consequences of stepping into a life not fully understood, and the emotional cost of caring too much. The shatter point had arrived. Their bond, so tender and fragile, seemed irreparably broken. Words left unsaid, actions misunderstood, and external pressures converged to create a moment where fear overtook hope, leaving them all questioning whether connection and love was truly possible. The room fell silent after the confrontation, but the echoes of tension lingered. Every small gesture now carried the weight of potential loss. Every glance held mistrust. And though no one spoke, each of them felt the painful truth. Sometimes the world's pressures could threaten the most precious of bonds, and only courage, honesty, and vulnerability could possibly repair them. Outside, the snow continued to fall silently, indifferent to the emotional storm raging within. Inside, 3 lives hung in balance, each facing the painful question: can we survive this fracture, or has everything we built been destroyed? Confronting fear and choosing vulnerability. The apartment was quiet now, almost oppressively so, the silence stretching after the storm of the previous afternoon. Outside, the snow had stopped falling, leaving the streets glistening under a pale winter sun. Inside, however, the atmosphere felt like a pressure cooker, thick with unresolved tension, guilt, and the lingering echoes of broken trust. Lily sat on the sofa, wrapped in a soft blanket, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She stared blankly at the window, though she barely saw the snow. Her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions: fear, anger, relief, longing, and confusion. She had spent the past few hours replaying every moment of the confrontation, every word Jerry had said, and every one she hadn't dared to speak. She questioned herself constantly. Had she overreacted? Should she have trusted him? Was hope even worth the risk? Across the room, Jerry sat in the armchair he had been avoiding for the past few hours, staring down at his hands. The weight of failure pressed down on him like a heavy stone. He had wanted to help, to bring warmth and safety to a family who had suffered too much, but now he questioned everything. His intentions had been pure, but the results were messy. Emily's sobs, Lily's fear, the bureaucratic pressures, all of it made him feel powerless. And for the first time in years, he realized that money and influence could not solve everything. True human connection demanded vulnerability, and he was terrified of the cost. Emily, sensing the tension but too young to understand it fully, had retreated to the corner with a stuffed bear clutched tightly to her chest. She peeked occasionally at Jerry and Lily, her wide eyes silently pleading for the family. She wanted more than anything. For long minutes, neither adult spoke. Words felt too dangerous, too exposed. Both were aware that saying the wrong thing could destroy the fragile thread that still connected them. Yet the thread existed, faint but persistent, like a candle flickering in the dark. Finally, Jerry broke the silence, his voice low but steady. "Lily, I know I scared you. I know I caused doubt, and I can't undo that. But leaving now, leaving you and Emily without even trying to fix this? That's not an option for me. I won't abandon you, not after everything we've been through." Lily looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Her pride and fear warred inside her, each demanding dominance. She had been so careful to protect her daughter, to shield them both from disappointment, that she had almost forgotten how it felt to risk her own heart. "Jerry, she faltered, the words stuck in her throat. She had rehearsed so many arguments, so many reasons to push him away, but none of them felt right anymore. The raw honesty in his eyes, the weight of his words, made her defenses feel suddenly futile. "You don't have to say anything yet," he whispered, leaning forward slightly, hands open and inviting. I needed you to know where I stand." The moment stretched, heavy with anticipation. Lily's fingers curled in the blanket, then slowly reached out toward him. Her hand trembled, but she placed it on the edge of the chair where Jerry's rested. He looked down, meeting her gaze, and nodded gently. That small contact was electric. It carried fear, trust, apology, and hope all at once. I'm scared," Lily admitted, her voice breaking slightly. "Scared that opening my heart will only bring pain." "I know," Jerry said softly. "I'm scared too. But I also know that the only way to truly care is to risk everything. And I choose to take that risk with you. With Emily." Emily, witnessing this exchange, let out a small squeak of relief and crawled onto Lily's lap, burying her face into her mother's chest. The tension in the room began to dissolve, replaced by cautious hope. We can try," Lily murmured. Her voice was small but determined. "We can try together." Jerry reached out and gently held both Lily's and Emily's hands. That simple gesture said more than words could. Commitment, protection, and a willingness to face the unknown together. The afternoon passed slowly, filled with quiet conversations and tentative laughter. They spoke about small things, plans for the holidays, silly games, dreams for the future. But beneath the surface ran a deeper current. A mutual promise to trust, to heal, and to choose each other despite fear. By evening, the apartment felt different. Not perfect, not without scars, but alive. Alive with possibility. The choice had been made, not just to forgive, not just to stay, but to embrace vulnerability, to open their hearts fully, and to allow love to take root. The snow outside had melted slightly, revealing the city's lights twinkling through the dusk. Inside, the three of them sat together, a fragile family now bonded by courage, choice, and hope. For Jerry and Lily, it was more than reconciliation. It was a conscious decision to step into love fully, despite the past, despite fear, and despite the uncertainty of tomorrow. In that moment, they understood something profound. The greatest risk in life was not love, but the failure to embrace it when it was offered. And they chose love. The first snow of the evening drifted gently past the window panes, dusting the streets with a soft, glittering layer that reflected the pale glow of streetlights. Inside the apartment, the air was warm, filled with the comforting aroma of cocoa and freshly baked cookies. A reminder of simpler, tender moments that had come to define their fragile family. Jerry, Lily, and Emily sat close together on the couch. It was quiet in a peaceful way. The kind of quiet that comes after storms, after tears, after heart-shattering misunderstandings. The events of the past days, the confrontation, the fear, the bureaucratic threats, had left their mark, but the bonds they had nurtured now felt unbreakable. Emily, her tiny fingers clutching a slightly melted chocolate chip cookie, looked up at Jerry with wide, trusting eyes. "Do you think Santa will come tonight?" she asked, echoing the whispered question from weeks ago. The one that had first drawn Jerry into their lives. Jerry smiled, gently ruffling her hair. "I think he might. But sometimes the magic doesn't come from a man in a red suit. Sometimes it comes from people who care about each other. People who are willing to be brave enough to love, even when it's scary." Emily's eyes sparkled as she leaned against Lily, whispering, "That's magic too." Lily smiled softly, her heart full. She glanced at Jerry, feeling an overwhelming mixture of gratitude, relief, and affection. "We've been through so much, but here we are. Together." Jerry reached out and took both of their hands, holding them gently. Together. Always. For a long moment, they simply sat there, letting the warmth of connection fill the room. The snow outside continued to fall silently, but it no longer felt cold. It was beautiful, peaceful, a reflection of their healing hearts. Later, as the evening deepened, Jerry helped Lily and Emily hang small ornaments on the tiny Christmas tree they had set up in the corner. Each ornament reflected a small memory, a new tradition, or a private joke. There was a simple joy in the act, but beneath it lay something profound. A celebration of survival, trust, and the courage to choose each other. Lily hung a tiny star on top of the tree, stepping back to admire it. She turned to Jerry, a quiet emotion catching in her throat. Thank you for everything. For staying. For believing. For helping us believe and hope again. Jerry smiled, his eyes soft. No, thank you. For trusting me. For letting me in. For letting me be part of this family. Emily, unable to contain herself, leapt into his lap, wrapping her tiny arms around his neck. I love you, Jerry, she shouted, giggling. Jerry hugged her tightly, his heart full in a way he hadn't felt in years. I love you too, Emily. More than you know. Lily watched them, a smile lighting her face as she felt the weight of the past weeks finally lift. The mistakes, the fears, the doubts, they were all still part of them, but they no longer had power over their hearts. Love had won, hope had endured, and the three of them were now a true family. As night fell, the apartment glowed with soft lamplight. Outside, the city glittered under a blanket of white. Inside there was laughter, warmth, and a sense of peace. The snowflakes, drifting past the windows, mirrored the tender beauty of the moments they now shared. And somewhere, in the quiet of that magical night, Jerry, Lily, and Emily understood a profound truth. Life would always bring challenges, but the bonds they had chosen to nurture, the love they had chosen to embrace, were strong enough to endure anything. Emily curled up between Jerry and Lily, whispering, "It's Mommy's best Christmas ever." Lily kissed her forehead gently. "And our last worries won't ruin it, sweetheart. We're together. Always." Jerry smiled, wrapping his arms around both of them. Together. Always. The camera of life, if it were watching, would pause on that perfect, tender frame. Three hearts connected, healing, and brave enough to love despite the scars. And outside, the first snow continued to fall, silent and sparkling, a quiet echo of hope, love, and the promise of many more Christmases to come. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. Your time, your support, and your presence here mean more than words can say. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or kept you watching, please make sure to subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss a new upload. Until next time, stay blessed, stay strong, and keep believing in love. See you in the next story.